Enter the conflict zone with Sarah Kelly.
As Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine rages on the battlefield, it is also using disinformation campaigns to promote false narratives. In a conflict zone special at the Munich Security Conference, I asked a high-level panel, how can the truth win in the battle against disinformation?
Conflict Zone. In 30 minutes on DW.
Constantly battling persecution and discrimination. Germany's Sinti and Roma communities. The Nazis murdered hundreds of thousands of them. The racism continued long after the war, in politics, society, and in the media, and it persists to this day. Post-war persecution, the plight of West German Sinti and Roma.
In 75 minutes on DW.
When you work as an architect, you go all in or not at all.
Women in architecture. Why are they so invisible to the larger public? We decided to ask them.
What is the poetry, the secret of a house?
Shattering the Glass Ceiling. Women in Architecture. Starts April 20th on DW.
I tried several times. I went more than 6 times to Greece. Each travel I have to spend like from 500 to 600 euro.
Currently, more people than ever are on the move worldwide in search of a better life.
You know, this is a very difficult journey. And when Greek army coach you, it's very hard. They beat you, they take everything, all your stuff.
Find out about Salman's story. Info Migrants. Reliable news for migrants, wherever they may be.
Frankfurt Airport. International gateway to the best connections of air, road and rail. Located in the heart of Europe, you are connected to the whole world. Experience outstanding shopping and dining offers. Enjoy our services. Be our guest at Frankfurt Airport City, managed by Fraport.
This is DW News, and these are our top stories. Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen has met with U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. It's the first meeting of its kind in the United States for decades. The event, held outside Los Angeles, was technically during a stopover for the Taiwanese leader. The talks were in defiance of warnings from China. Beijing claims self-governing Taiwan as its own territory. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has traveled to the Polish capital, Warsaw, on a rare trip abroad. Poland is one of Ukraine's staunchest allies in the war with Russia. The Polish President Duda promised to send Kiev more MiG fighter aircraft and to push for Ukraine to join NATO. A man wielding a hatchet has killed at least 4 children at a kindergarten in southern Brazil. Several others were also seriously injured. Authorities say a 25-year-old man scaled the wall around the preschool in the city of Blumenau. The suspect later turned himself in to police. This is DW News from Berlin, and remember you can find much more news on our website. That's dw.com.
Donald Trump didn't say much during his arraignment in a court in New York City. Yes, I do. Not guilty. That was pretty much it. He didn't speak to the press or his supporters heading in or out. Immediately after his court appearance, he flew back to Florida. As the whole world was watching history unfold, the former president almost seemed speechless. But back in front of his supporters in Mar-a-Lago, he returned to his tried and tested ways. He lashed out against the investigation, portrayed himself as the victim, and repeated baseless claims of voter fraud, among many other lies. And just like that, he managed to turn the day of his arrest into a campaign event for his re-election. I'm Nicole Fröhlich in Berlin, and this is The Day.
The only crime that I have committed is to fearlessly defend our nation from those who seek to destroy it.
Trump will be Trump, which is that he will use this for publicity, even if it's negative publicity.
This fake case was brought only to interfere with the upcoming 2024 election, and it should be dropped immediately.
There's a lot of independents that are just tired of all the chaos of Trump, and they don't want to vote for him, and they don't want a second Trump presidency. So I think in the end, it will also benefit Joe Biden in his campaign if he runs again.
Also on the day, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky makes a rare trip abroad, visiting one of his most important allies and getting a promise of more fighter jets.
4 MiG-29s are being delivered, which brings the total to 8 Polish MiG-29s delivered to Ukraine. Today I told President Zelensky that we are ready to deliver another 6, which are undergoing maintenance.
Welcome to The Day. It's 20 months until the U.S. goes to the polls to pick a new president, but there's one candidate who's already dominating the race. Donald Trump. Trump, who served one term as president, is seen as the frontrunner to clinch the Republican nomination, but he's also facing criminal charges after his historic indictment in New York on Tuesday. Trump ended his day in court back at his home in Florida, telling a crowd of his supporters that he's the victim of a politically motivated plot by the Democrats to derail his bid to return to the White House.
This fake case was brought only to interfere with the upcoming 2024 election, and it should be dropped immediately. They attacked me with an onslaught of fraudulent investigations. Russia, Russia, Russia. Ukraine, Ukraine, Ukraine. Impeachment hoax number 1. Impeachment hoax number 2. The illegal and unconstitutional raid on Mar-a-Lago right here. But now they have really stepped up their efforts by indicting the 45th President of the United States. And this is where we are right now. I have a Trump-hating judge with a Trump-hating wife and family whose daughter worked for Kamala Harris and now receives money from the Biden-Harris campaign, and a lot of it.
Now, in his speech, Trump claimed that every single pundit and legal analyst says there is no case against him. So I'm very happy to have a legal expert on the show to get her take on it. Jennifer Taub is a law professor at Western New England University School of Law and joins me now. Ms. Taub, welcome to The Day. So 34 felony charges, but is there a case?
Yes, there absolutely is a case. And the way to see that is to look outside of the indictment into the statement of facts, as well as the address that the district attorney gave to the public after the arraignment, which makes very clear that these are serious charges. And at least some of them, if not all of them, will stand up under court scrutiny, which we should expect soon.
Let's pick it apart. Why are these financial crimes being treated as felonies and not as misdemeanors?
Well, these financial crimes that have actually been charged in the indictment are on the books as felonies. The statute that is actually referenced here is the felony of falsification of business records in the first degree. What makes it a felony is that if you make a false statement in your financial records, and then in addition to intending to defraud with the false statement, you also use that false statement to either cover up or further another felony, then the false statement charge itself is a felony.
So what are those other violations? What are those other felonies that he would have paved the way for? Was this proven to be true?
So what's so fascinating here is the indictment that the grand jury issued does not name those underlying felonies, much to the shock of many lawyers, but they don't need to name them. In the statement of facts, they describe what they're likely to be, and there are really three types. One would be a federal campaign violation, like election law violation. The second would be a state, meaning a New York state law, criminal law that was violated related to the election. And then the third, which is the most promising, is a state tax law violation. And what the DA, Alvin Bragg, has said is that they will be giving the jury these different avenues to choose from. All the indictment needs to do is state, which it does in these 34 counts, that this is the felony violation of the falsification of business records law.
Mm-hmm. The burden of proof is incredibly high here, and of course the public scrutiny is as well. What path do you think the prosecution is going to go down to actually prove their case?
Well, it's interesting that you should mention the burden of proof, because as you know, to convict someone, the burden of proof is beyond a reasonable doubt. However, just to do the indictment, it's much lower. It's just probable cause to indict. So the next step, the prosecution is actually going to be on the defensive a little bit. I read the court transcript, and what the court transcript did say is that they're expecting, as the defense said, Donald Trump's lawyers are expecting to file a motion to challenge the indictment itself. They will have, they looked at giving them plenty of time. They're saying no later than, I think, August 5th of this year, Donald Trump's lawyers will make their objections. What they're waiting to do is look at the discovery. They're going to be seeing the documents that were presented to the grand jury and so on. And then they're going to challenge the indictment, which will then, the court will have to decide whether some or all of it can move forward. In terms of the prosecution's case, you know, this trial, the earliest this trial will be is January of 2024. And they were even talking in court about it more likely being tried about a year from now. Yeah. And so I expect, you know, sorry, go ahead.
It's going to be top primary season then, isn't it? How do you think this will affect the race to become the Republican candidate?
So far, Donald Trump is the leading candidate of the Republican Party. The Republican Party has now become the MAGA party, the Make America Great Again, with the overtones of, you know, sort of authoritarianism, the echoes of America First, which ties back to, you know, authoritarian and fascist movements in the U.S. That's who the party is controlled by right now. So I don't see this hurting him. But there are going to be other charges most likely brought against him. It's going to be quite a busy campaign season while he's trying to make the court appearances, which this judge said that he can't skip. This is really important, that he has to show up when there is a court date, because if he doesn't, the judge said, then we can waive your right to appear in the future.
Yeah.
And so he said he understood that.
Trump's lawyers want to see the case dismissed before it even goes to court, right? You pointed that out before. But one of his attorneys has said that this should be, if it does go to court, be the quickest verdict in history. What's their strategy to get there, you think?
I don't, you know, that's hyperbole. I don't know what the quickest verdict is in history. And this case has already gone to court, right? A judge has already, presided over this arraignment. In terms of being heard before a jury, I don't know how you secure a quick acquittal. But let's keep in mind that Donald Trump's businesses were convicted of the very same crimes of business record falsification related to under the table tax payments in front of the same judge that a jury convicted his two of his businesses, the Trump Corporation and the Trump Payroll Corporation. So that was a very quick verdict, too. So I wouldn't be hoping for a quick verdict because it may not go the way that his lawyers expect.
It does, one way or another, look like we're in for a long ride. What is next for both sides?
The next thing that we will see is discovery shared. There are some documents within the next week the prosecution will be handing over to the Donald Trump defense team. And then within another few weeks or months, there'll be another bunch of documents, and then finally, more of them. So basically, most of what's going to be happening is the defense team is going to be able to take a look at the evidence that the prosecution has developed, some of the evidence that is, but mostly what they're going to see is the documentation and the witness transcripts and so on that the grand jury was able to look at. Because remember, the first legal challenge is that the grand jury should not have returned this indictment. And the grounds under New York law include that the evidence was not sufficient to make the probable cause finding, or that the grand jury was somehow defective. In order to do that, they need to scour all of that information in order to make their arguments. And the judge said on December 4th of this year, the judge will make a decision as to whether all or parts of the indictment stand. That's a long wait for us. And until then, there is a real criminal case pending against the former president.
Yeah, he is also being investigated in 4 other cases. Does this indictment have an effect on these other proceedings?
It's just a different jurisdiction, right? There is an investigation by the Georgia, Fulton County, which is the county prosecutor in Georgia. And then there are 2 federal cases. What folks may know, but not fully appreciate, is that under federalism in the United States, we have 50 states, and then we have the federal government. But the way each state kind of does things a bit differently. For example, we're hearing about the district attorney from Manhattan. So this local prosecutor from the county where Manhattan is, which is New York County, has the authority to enforce all the New York criminal laws in New York. Within Manhattan. Similar, there's a district attorney in Georgia, and Fulton County is enforcing all of Georgia law in her jurisdiction. And then separately, we have these 2 cases that the new special counsel, Jack Smith, is looking at regarding federal law violations in connection with Donald Trump hoarding those documents at Mar-a-Lago, as well as all of the associated crimes, including like obstruction and possibly insurrection-related charges related to the January 6th attack on the Capitol, the lead up to that in terms of, the false electors as well as the attack itself. So there's a lot going on. There are going to be a lot of lawyers involved, and a lot of chaos in his life, I would imagine.
A lot going on. Thank you so much for breaking it down for us, Jennifer Taub. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky doesn't travel much, paying only a handful of visits to key allies since Russia's full-scale invasion over a year ago. Now he has made another rare wartime trip abroad to neighboring Poland. Poland has been one of Ukraine's closest and most vocal allies and has provided extensive military aid. It was the first country to send Leopard battle tanks, and now Poland has also pledged to send Ukraine all of its remaining MiG fighter jets, on top of those already promised.
Standing shoulder to shoulder, Ukraine's president on a visit to one of his country's staunchest allies. Volodymyr Zelensky was awarded Poland's highest order, the Order of the White Eagle. He later laid a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier in Warsaw. But crucially for Ukraine, Poland offered to seek more NATO security guarantees for Kyiv at an upcoming summit.
I am firmly convinced that we will succeed in obtaining such guarantees for Ukraine as an introduction to Ukraine's future full membership in NATO, which Poland strongly supports.
Warsaw is also the first NATO member to send fighter jets to Ukraine.
4 MiG-29s are being delivered, which brings the total to 8 Polish MiG-29s delivered to Ukraine. Today I told President Zelensky that we are ready to deliver another 6, which are undergoing maintenance. I think in the future we will be able to deliver the rest of our MiG-29 fleet to Ukraine if it is needed.
Zelensky thanked his host and said he wanted Poland as one of the main nations in helping rebuild Ukraine.
An important point in our relations is the reconstruction of Ukraine. It will bring our businesses closer, our nations closer. It's important for us that Poland be one of the main partners in the reconstruction of Ukraine.
It's a rare trip abroad during wartime for Zelensky. A show of thanks for Poland's support for Kyiv. Poland has taken more than 1 million refugees, many of whom gathered outside the presidential palace where the two leaders were meeting.
And for more, let's bring in Sophie Arts. She's a program officer for security and defense at the German Marshall Fund in Washington. Good to see you. This was a trip, first and foremost, to thank Poland for its support since the start of the war. What role has Warsaw played since the full-scale invasion?
Yeah, it's really played a huge role, and the relationship between the two countries has been very strong, and Poland has been one of the staunchest supporters on Ukraine's side, along with other allies on the eastern flank. And I think a lot of that goes back to the fact that they, given their geographic location, they really share this assessment of Russia as an existential threat, and this battle over Ukraine as an existential frontline. And so there's a huge importance placed on this relationship from both sides. And Poland has been supporting Ukraine from the very start, as you know, your colleagues have pointed out, with supporting and taking in refugees right at the beginning, supporting or bringing in critical military aid, really pushing the envelope on the military aid that they're committing, kind of running ahead of a lot of allies.
And they're doing so again, aren't they? There were new military pledges this time around, and the first MiG-29 fighter jets just arrived in Ukraine. Zelensky today even talked about Poland forming a coalition to supply more warplanes. So how much pressure does that put on Kyiv's other allies to step up aid?
Yeah, I think it definitely puts a lot of pressure, and it's a strategy that has worked in the past, especially with regard to the main battle tanks. You brought up the Leopard tanks earlier. So I think this issue is maybe a little bit different because U.S. and other allies have indicated that they're not really considering fighter jets at this time, but I think it's a very important signal on behalf of Poland to keep the momentum going.
Yeah, they're taking the lead. They used to say, you know, we'll be the first, but we don't want to be the only ones. Are we now seeing them take a different approach, seeing that, you know, neither the U.S., Germany, France, or the U.K. have made any moves when it comes to fighter jets?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're just committing what they have. As I said before, I think they really see this as an existential struggle and realize that Ukraine needs all the help that it can get. I think in some ways, these capabilities are, of course, not the most modern. And so from that perspective, it's not maybe as huge a loss for Poland, but it's setting a signal in the direction, maybe leading to more support with fighter jets or other capabilities in the long term, but certainly keeping the momentum going.
How is this viewed by NATO and Ukraine's other allies?
I think overall, Poland's commitments have been received well. I think there's a high appreciation for the fact that Poland is willing to do so much. And I think also an acknowledgement in retrospect that Poland and other allies on the eastern flank have been really right for a long time, long before the invasion of February 24th, warning about the Russian threat. And so I think there's an appreciation of that. But on the other hand, I think there's a certain hesitancy about the way they're approaching the issue, the way they're, you know, just running forward without consulting with allies, kind of cutting through red tapes in ways that other allies maybe can't. So I think there is a certain frustration, but also an appreciation of what they're doing.
Sophie Arts, lots of appreciation from us too. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time.
Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen has met with U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, the first meeting of this kind in the United States for decades. McCarthy's position as House Speaker makes him number 3 in the U.S. political hierarchy, and he's the most senior American figure to meet a Taiwanese leader on U.S. soil since 1979. The trip comes despite warnings from China. Speaking after the talks, the two leaders stressed their strong ties and friendship.
I believe our bond is stronger now than at any time or point in my lifetime. The friendship between the people of Taiwan and America is a matter of profound importance to the free world, and it is critical to maintain economic freedom, peace, and regional stability. We will honor our obligations and reiterate our commitment to our shared values, behind which all Americans are united.
Their presence and unwavering support reassure the people of Taiwan that we are not isolated and we are not alone. The peace that we have maintained and the democracy which have worked hard to build are facing unprecedented challenges. We once again find ourselves in a world where democracy is under threat, and the urgency of keeping the beacon of freedom shining cannot be understated.
Brian Hart is a fellow at the China Power Project at the Center for Strategic and International Studies and joins me now from Washington. Welcome to the day. The hugely symbolic visit there, but it is being branded as a stopover of sorts. On her way back from Central America, they're meeting in California, not in Washington. Are they treading carefully here to not anger China?
Yeah, so thanks to the unofficial nature of U.S.-Taiwan relations, these visits by, Taiwan's leaders are actually called transits. So they're not official visits that are done on a government-to-government basis. And they've happened in various formats over the last several decades. This is, depending on how you count, about the 30th time this has happened in the last 3 decades. But I think one of the key things here is to the extent to which this is advertised and how high profile this is. I think under Tsai Ing-wen, her transits to the United States have been a bit more high profile than some of her predecessors. They've been a bit longer, and they've included some of these meetings, with U.S. members of Congress. This is the most high profile meeting she's had during her transit with Speaker McCarthy. And so this is a little bit different from some of her past transits.
Yeah, McCarthy says that the bond between the U.S. and Taiwan is greater now than ever before in his lifetime. How is that going to go down in Beijing?
Yeah, I think U.S.-Taiwan relations have really seen a considerable strengthening in recent years, mainly in response to pressure from Beijing on Taiwan and the U.S. desire to kind of strengthen that relationship to deter China. I think a key here is the extent to which, Washington wants to continue to strengthen this relationship with President Tsai. There's clearly a willingness on her part. But I think another key question is exactly, how Beijing responds. And I think that's what we're kind of waiting to see. When Speaker Pelosi traveled to Taiwan back in August of 2022, China responded with really unprecedented military exercises around the island of Taiwan and put significant pressure on the island. So I think we're all kind of waiting to see exactly how China will respond. Will it respond on the same kind of scale, or will it try to ramp up the pressure, or will it feel pressure to perhaps respond more softly than last time? Yeah. I think there's a lot of dynamics at play here.
We only have about a minute left, but I don't want to let you go without asking you, how much influence does the U.S. really have on what China does with Taiwan?
I think, the United States is constantly trying to engage with China to deter China from putting pressure on Taiwan. I think the Biden administration has been trying to put a bit of guardrails or a floor on the relationship with China, especially when it comes to Taiwan, and try to avoid potential escalation in the Taiwan Strait. But a lot of this really is up to Xi Jinping and Beijing in terms of how much they really want to escalate this here. And I think, again, this will be a key test for Xi Jinping. I think this will be, how he responds to Tsai's transit and to her meeting with McCarthy will really, I think, play a big role in the next couple of weeks and months in terms of where U.S.-China relations go from here.
Brian Hart at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Pleasure speaking to you. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.
And that is our time, but make sure to stay informed, stay engaged, and stay in touch. Follow our team on Twitter at DW News and myself at Nicole_Fröhlich. For now, from all of us here on The Day, thank you so much for spending part of your day with us.